This episode of the MSP podcast is brought to you by Big Tex Outdoors. Everything you could possibly need for your firearm. If he doesn't have it, you probably don't need it. And PHLster holsters. Can't do a sub 5-second fast drill? Well, get a PHLster holster. If you still can't, well, at least you know it's not the holster's fault. And Primary and Secondary, the definitive source for the armed professional and the responsible citizen. Quit your bitching about all the rules and get better. Hey guys, welcome back to the MSP podcast. Today I'm going to be recasting, with the permission of Matt Landfair over at Primary and Secondary, a modcast I had hosted for them a while back. It features some outstanding Americans and how they used competition to get better. I hope you dig it.
Anyway, my name is Scott Jedlinski. Today we're going to be talking about tactical gamers. I don't know if it's a good title, but I think it says a lot. We're going to go and talk to a lot of people that are from all spectrums of the firearms community, but mostly guys that have served in some form of duty or something to that effect. We'll have some other people hop on here soon as well. So I'm not going to do the introductions. I'm going to have you guys do the introductions. So we will start off with Mike Pannone. So guys, just say who you are, what you do, what you've done, and whatever else you want to say. All right. So Mike, we'll start with you.
All right. Mike Pannone. I'm the founder, owner, whatever, of CTT Solutions, which is my own training company. Just a quick one over the world. Started out in Marine Reconnaissance my first 6 years, then went to Army Special Forces, and then was selected for first SFOD, served as an assaulter, and sustained a breaching injury, took my right eye. I went and helped stand up the Air Marshal program. I was one of the first 10 instructors that did that. And then I went to Iraq in 03, 04, and 05. 03 and 04, I did protection work. 03 for the Iraqi Media Network, 04 for the State Department, and then 05, I was a ground combat advisor in the Anbar province. I was a Title 10 combatant, so I was a regular ground combatant. I looked just like everybody else, dressed like everybody else, same ROE, all that. Sports shooter, master class in 3 divisions, actually leaving tomorrow morning for the Nationals. So aside from that, all around square Joe and, lover of all things gun it.
What are you shooting tomorrow? Limited, Mike?
I'm shooting production.
Oh, you're shooting production. Awesome. And Jose Gordon says hello.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's as good as they get, man.
Absolutely. John, you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Jon Dufrense. I am part of Sage Dynamics. I train with Aaron Cowan. I also teach for Frank Proctor from Way of the Gun, and I am a former U.S. Army Ranger. I have 4 combat deployments over to Afghanistan, and I spent 5 years in. Now I do private security and executive protection work on the side, but I'm also a full-time student and full-time instructor.
Awesome. All right. We're still waiting for a couple people, Aril Levy and Ernest Langdon, to hop on. We had them before, but we lost them. So by default, you're next, Shannon.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hello, gents. Hey, my name is Shannon Campbell, and I am not prior military, and I'm not prior law enforcement. My exposure to everything gun has been starting with an executive protection career that led to working with different embassies in the National Capital Region. And the next thing I know, I'm working in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, South Africa, Lesotho, and several other places. About 12 years later, finished in Indonesia. And I guess you could say my foundation was made along the way.
Okay, cool. All right. So what I would like to start off with is probably the best explanation that kind of alleviated the confusion between, competition and, tactical self-defense stuff was actually, Mike, your explanation on Aril Levy's show, where you're talking about drills versus scenarios. For our audience, would you kind of mind rehashing that? Because I think it's a great baseline to start off the show.
Okay, cool. Yeah. First thing that I see people talk about sports shooting or game shooting, whatever you want to freaking call it, it'll get you killed and it's bad. It'll ruin your tactics and all that. They don't actually understand what they're talking about. They don't understand the difference between the two. Tactics are the application of a whole host of different component skills. There's a whole bunch of different things that you are capable of doing, and you employ them at the tactically appropriate time. So there's drills and there's scenarios. Okay, a drill is an exercise of a component skill. Okay, I practice reloads. All right, it's the easiest one. It's like a pet peeve of mine because friggin', if I hear tactical reload again, I might shoot myself. There's no such friggin' thing as a tactical reload. It's just a reload. There's different kinds of reloads, and there's reloads done at tactically appropriate times and tactically appropriate manners. But there's no such thing as a tactical reload. What makes it tactical is when you do it, and when you do it tactically is based on the scenario. A scenario is an open-ended story that I input you into, and you have to guide it to a successful conclusion based on your skills and experience. So a scenario is a judgment exercise. I look at how you solve problems based on incomplete information, and I see what skills you employ. And under the stresses of that environment, I see how capable you are of actually employing those skills. That's very different from a drill. A drill is, again, an exercise of a component skill. Okay, and I saw it when we were standing up the Air Marshal program. One of the drills for the original TPC was draw, fire one shot, slide lock, reload while taking a knee, fire another shot. And people go, well, I would never do that. I would never do that. And I said, nobody's asking you to do that in any scenario. It's an exercise of a component skill. I want to see you reload your gun and move at the same time. That's all. They didn't even understand the difference. And I see that all the time in military and law enforcement. They conflate the two as though drills are tactics, and they're not. Tactics are just a way to accomplish a simple task. It's on the micro level. It goes tactics, and then techniques, and then principles of the system. That's my TTPs. I go from micro to macro. So I have techniques, and then I have tactics, or an amalgamation of a bunch of techniques that have to fall underneath the principles of my system. Like most people just intellectually, they just don't get it. And they do what they do because that's what they've done, because that's what they do, because that's what they've done. And they never educate themselves on what it really means. Yeah. It is a real problem because they wind up executing really counterproductive training because they don't understand exactly what they're doing.
Got it.
Well put.
So, Aril, Ernest, welcome. We're going to have you. So we just went over what we said before. We had Mike go through his scenario versus drill that he went over in Firearms Nation. Ernest, we'll let you go ahead. Do you want to look just, if anybody doesn't know who they are, they're not trying hard enough. But why don't you go ahead and tell people anyway?
Who I am?
Yeah, who you are.
I'm just some former Marine looking to learn to shoot better. Yeah, basically I run my own company, training, consulting for firearms industry, working on guns, things of that nature. 12 years in the Marine Corps, some of that time teaching a couple of schools, including the Marine Corps Scout Sniper School and the high-risk personnel program. I've been pretty serious in competition over the years. Competed very seriously when I got out of the Marine Corps. Actually, before I got out of the Marine Corps, I started getting pretty serious about it, and then that became a pretty serious focus for me for quite a few years. And now I'm working for myself again. I've worked for a couple of gun companies, Beretta, Smith & Wesson. I've consulted for SIG, Wilson Combat, Crimson Trace, several other companies like that. So that's who I am.
Awesome. And not that it matters or not, but just kind of going over classifications, you're obviously a GM, and you were the first USPSA Production Nationals champion?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
There you go. Just minor detail.
In 2000.
2000. Minor detail. And how many IDPA national championships do you have?
Well, if you count Winter Nationals, I've got 9 IDPA national championships.
Good God almighty. Outstanding. All right. Follow that one, buddy.
Wow. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled and honored to be with this group here. Mike, I don't see you, but I heard your voice. I'm glad you were able to get on. It vibrates. That's okay. Anyways, I'm Aril Levy, and I'm down here in South Florida also. I've been in law enforcement going on my 15th year. For 6 of those years, these 6 past years, -1, I was the lead firearms instructor for my agency. did shotgun, rifle, handgun classes, active shooter, building tactics, the whole 9 yards. And during that time, somebody pulled me aside and said, you know what? You're going to get a hell of a lot better if you start competing. And I said, okay. I was always very hesitant to get into competition, because people would tell me competition will get you killed. And I'm like, can't do that.
Already broke the seal, man.
I broke the seal on that one.
I
I pulled that card and I threw it. But I'm here to tell you that competition will not get you killed. And we'll get into that. But that was a huge, huge thing for me to accelerate my growth as a shooter and as an instructor, was to start competing. And I competed. I did IDPA to start, but I really took a shine to USPSA. I like the creativeness that is involved in that type of shooting, the speed, the movement, the less restrictions. So I've been shooting USPSA for a while. I was very fortunate to hook up with Bruce Gray and get onto Team SIG. I was on that for 2 years, and that was a tremendous experience. And along that time, I started this thing called Firearms Nation, which was a small YouTube channel. But then I did this shooter summit with some of the people who are on here tonight, and that was a big success, and it brought a lot of value to a lot of people. I plan on doing another one, but because of that, I also got into a podcast, which I do every week now, where I get into the minds of people who are inside the Firearms Nation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're doing an amazing job over there.
Thank you.
I would say the Shooter Summit opened up so many minds. I think people knew that Mike Pannone competed, obviously Ernest, things of that nature. A lot of people, even though he's a big name on the gaming side, didn't know that Shannon Smith used to be a Ranger, and the fact that Kyle Lamb also competed, that blew a lot of people's minds. So good work over there. I guess I'll do my intro. My name's Scott Jadlinski. Nickname's Jedi because no one can pronounce my last name. I non-Ellie, non-Mill, say being an Air Force brat for many, many years. How I got into shooting is I live in Northern Virginia, Metro DC area. I'm a lifelong martial artist. For the last 9 years, it's been Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You can't train in this area without meeting, guys who shoot other people in the face. One of my buddies, Al De Leon, who's part of the MSD of State Department, gave me some free shooting lessons after I got him to blue belt. Naturally, just like jiu-jitsu, you start to compete. And, because drilling and just going into the world championships of, the mat every single night got boring, and you want to go against people that you don't know who they are and what the circumstance is and see how well you do. Same thing happened with shooting. It's just a natural progression of getting into competition. And the funny thing is that even in the jiu-jitsu world, the phrase competition will get you killed in the street is very prevalent in that world as well. Meanwhile, those competitors are the ones making the most money with the best careers in jiu-jitsu and MMA. Anyway, so that's a little bit about me. Moving on. All right, so I think we got a good baseline. Does anybody want to add anything to what Mike said on his scenario versus drill type of analogy? Anything that you guys have come up with? You want to add on to that at all?
I didn't hear most of it, so
I didn't hear it either.
Oh,
Mike, I signed on late. Yeah.
Yeah. Mike, you want to give like a really quick synopsis of what you said before?
All right. People conflate the two, scenarios and drills. A drill is an exercise of component skills. I work on my draw. I work on a drill that accentuates my draw, or my reloads, or something we're talking on the shooting side. A scenario is a story. It's an open-ended story that I input you into, and you have to guide it to a successful conclusion based on incomplete information, your skills, and your experience. And then I look at your judgment on how you apply those component skills. Marksmanship and shooting is a component skill. It's a subordinate skill in tactics. You don't use it every time. Every time you pull your gun out in a tactical environment, you don't shoot somebody. But if you need to, it's there. It's not always the answer. It may be an answer. It may be a solution. And they look at shooting in the format of a scenario. If I do a drill, I wouldn't do that in real life and I stop them right there. because I'm not asking you to solve a problem. I'm not asking you to do a scenario. I'm not giving you a situation saying, how would you respond? I'm saying, show me that you know how to do this particular component skill at a high level of skill. That's all. And in military and law enforcement, they conflate the two. They literally don't know the difference between a drill and a scenario. And so they mix the two together, and neither one gets done properly.
That's spot on.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, first time I heard it was on Arik's show, and I said that's brilliant. I got to write this down. And I just handed a sheet of paper to people who conflate the two. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But
Hey,
Ernest,
I have a question
ahead,
for Mike,
yeah.
since he just mentioned that. Mike, so the guys that do drills exclusively, there's a subset of people who they won't compete, but they'll do drills at a high level. They'll push themselves on the clock over and over again. Do you think that they're missing out on that final component by not going into scenarios, which would be competition?
Well, competition isn't a scenario either. Competition is a drill, but it's a very dynamic drill. There's a lot of different components to it. What they're missing is the ability to, as I see it, and guys can jump in that compete as well. The two things that I get the most out of it, that I have applied, that I've applied in combat, the actual in real application of a firearm for what a firearm is designed for, in the 3 years I was overseas, is you learn to see faster, and you learn to see with more precision faster, and you learn to solve problems as you move and have alternate plans and changes of plan. That the only way that you can exercise that is to be in a position. Here's a for instance. I shoot production, so I got 10 rounds in the magazine. I start with 10 plus 1. Okay, I may have a stage where I've got 5 targets and 1 piece of steel, and then I move to the next box. Now I have to decide if I'm gonna shoot and reload before I leave and then finish the steel up, or if I'm gonna try and shoot 11 shots. Now, if I shoot 11 shots clean, I'm in my primary plan. If I drop a shot or I have to have a makeup shot, now all of a sudden my ammo load is different. I have to solve that problem as it's happening. Remember that all my reloads and all my walkthrough is different. I've got to have a primary plan and an alternate plan. Okay. In SOF, we have, I know at least one SOF guy out there. We had 4 plans: primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. At least at SFOD we did. We had 4 plans for everything. And so when I'm shooting, I'm constantly tweaking my plan as I go. It's forcing me to keep track of everything around me spatially, and keep track of my ammunition load, and keep track of my gun. And it teaches me to do things on the fly that I can't do in a static environment. It puts stressors on me that don't exist in a static environment. When everybody shoots, even as hard as we try not to, everyone shoots the things that they like to shoot because they're good at them. You got to force yourself out of it. You got to learn to love to do the things you hate to do. And so overwhelmingly, people don't do that. And so if you're really good at 10 yards and in, that's where you'll shoot. But you won't shoot at 50 because you suck at 50. People deny themselves the opportunity to learn in an environment that is outside of their control. And I'm telling you, God is my witness, man, you will be better at everything you do with a firearm if you shoot a standardized course against everybody else. Because, you're going to get beat by a 13-year-old girl. You're going to get beat by a guy that took his oxygen off to start the stage. I mean, you just got to know. Hey, guess what? They beat me because they're better at this than me. And all of that, the whole dynamic, the thinking, the seeing, the humbleness, that you ain't all that is important. And they deny themselves that and they stagnate.
No, 100% agree. And I think the kicker that Mike put on was the stressors that it puts on people, especially, a guy who's got a lot of background and experience, it may not be stressful for them, but there's been plenty of studies that have been done that the social stressors your body has the same physiological responses to social stressors as it does to the threat of physical harm. So when you are around all your peers and your buddies, and the RO, SO, whatever steps up behind you and says, "Shooter ready, stand by," and that little buzzer comes up, turns on, and as Pat Mack says, a little bit of poop comes out. It's stressful in a way that's very difficult to replicate, and being able to force yourself to think and perform, and as Mike was talking about, make decisions and change the plan and continue to process information and work, because I've seen people literally vapor lock in the middle of a stage. They just can't think anymore.
Yeah.
And it's such an important skill that it's very difficult to learn to master. And the more you do, you get better at it. And I'm not for a second saying, hey, if you get good at shooting matches, you're going to be great at gunfighting. But it is a tremendous tool for people that should not be overlooked as a training tool to help them improve in every aspect of marksmanship.
Yeah.
Shannon, John, what you got?
So something that I've learned from competing and from when I started competing while still being in a tactical environment was that I could process things much quicker than some of the other dudes. For example, if I was running through a shoot house with 3 other guys and, big first sergeants watching everybody from above on the catwalk, it's nerve-wracking. But I'm able to run through this process and process targets much quicker than most dudes that were right next to me that have been training as long as me. They just haven't been pushing themselves. And that's one of the things that competition actually forces. It forces you to push yourself and process things. And like you said earlier, planning, and having these set plans for what happens if plan 1 doesn't work, and these contingencies. So overall, I think the whole competitive world and the tactical world could, if we just like mushed them together, and we all got to remember too that what's the common denominator between the two sides of shooting, and that's shooting. So personally, I think I don't know why there is a divide, but people like to take sides on things. So.
We're going to get into that. We're going to get into that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike. Yeah. Why do you think there's a divide?
Why there's a divide, but I something else to add to what who was who's
say that again, Mike.
Who was just talking?
That was
me,
John.
John, here to add to that. One of the things that it was a seminal moment when I was an OTC, when I was operator training force. A guy he's a famous character in the movie Black Hawk Down, pretty epic guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but probably the most prominent in that movie, the most prominent guy that came from my unit. That's the guy who was one of my instructors. And we're shooting a course of fire, and it was pretty challenging, and had a bunch of stuff moving and all that. And I was dicking it up because I was getting really amped up. And of course, you're shooting for your job every day, so it's a little stressful. And he pulled me aside. He's like, "Hey, check it out, bro. It's sight and trigger. Because it doesn't matter what you're shooting, the answer is in your sights and your trigger. That's it. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're on the range. It doesn't matter if you're in freaking Mogadishu or you're in Baghdad or you're in Helmand Province. That the answer is sights and trigger. And if you remember that, the rest of it is, you recognize that shooting is shooting. The application of firearms is different. The tactical application. When I move from a shooting position to another shooting position in USPSA, I'm reloading on the move because I can do 2 things at once. When I was in Al-Qaim and I was moving from the side of a building to the side of a wall, I reload before I go because all kinds of kooky shit can happen in between here and there. And so it's like the application is different, but how I shot from one position, how I got in position and set up on the other position is exactly the same. It's not kind of the same. It's exactly the same. The application of it is what's different. People don't recognize that. Shooting is shooting, period. Marksmanship is marksmanship. There's no such thing as tactical marksmanship. There's proper marksmanship applied in a tactical environment. That's it. It's all the same. And they keep wanting to say there's something different. And there's not. There absolutely is not. I didn't do anything different at a rifle match at Rio Salado a month and a half back than I did anything that I was using rifles over in Iraq. Nothing good. Everything that I did was the same. How I applied it, used the cover, to the rest of your team, all that stuff. That's different. The shooting part, the sights and trigger part is the same. It's not kind of the same. It's not close to the same. It's the same. And people keep trying to act as though it's different. That's where we all break apart. That's where the people that shoot on both sides go, no, it's just shooting, bro.
Yeah,
and people listen, well, I'm a tactical shooter. Like, stop it.
No, exactly.
I agree with John also, his assessment. And I think, Scott, your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, the more stress that you put yourself into, and for like Ernie and Mike, I'm sure you've seen it too. Like, I go to critical calls, things do not phase me at all. I mean, I am processing things and doing things, and I'm staying at that baseline. I'm not getting elevated. Where other people, they're in that red zone. They're screaming on the radio and doing stuff. And to me, it's just, I can see things and I can do things and I can call up perimeters and drive and do all that stuff, or dealing with suspects. Same thing. It all applies. And I think that is a direct correlation to being under stress constantly every match I go to, and being in that competition. It just makes it a more comfortable environment to work in.
Absolutely. And the testing of yourself when someone else is setting the parameters that you don't know about, right? Which is why jiu-jitsu is so awesome. Like, you never know what that guy's going to do. I mean, you kind of do, especially if he's a lower belt than you, but that level of stress that you get every single day, it's the same with competition. It's like, hey, I'm awesome at the fast drill, or I'm awesome at dock torture or bill drill, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, bro, but you knew that shit was coming.
Exactly.
Now let's go shoot the match, and the match director is 3'5", and let's see what kind of problems that gives me as someone who's 6'2", and the inverse. That said, Rick, we're going to introduce you in a second, but I want to get Shannon's feedback. You got anything to add to that, man, in your experience?
Yeah, I kind of have an inverted comment, because I'm not prior military. I'm not prior law enforcement. And because of that, well, Ernie was there back in those early days with me, but I was A-class in production, and yet I passed every shooting claw when I went through vetting with Blackwater, and they gave me a job immediately on Ambassador Bremer's detail. It was either Marine Force Recon or SEAL or, SFOD and that sort of thing that were on that team. And I was like, why the heck did they choose me? And it was actually a buddy that I was doing that indoc with that said, you outshot everybody. I shot a 249 for the first time. And I was hitting, 200-yard, MGM BCCs. Was able to control the trigger and actually get splits and triples if I wanted. And where did that come from? That came from competitive shooting. And that was my foundation. That was my base. And because of that, I guess, I don't know, they wanted that thing. And so I actually went out, and that was actually my first detail with Blackwater. Stayed on for Ambassador Negroponte and moved on to other projects. But I saw a constant theme, whether I was working with WPS, INL, GRS. They wanted people that shot accurate and fast. And it was competitive shooting that drove me to want to shoot faster, to shoot more accurate. Yet they found that apparently if this guy shoots good, he must be tactically sound, which was not true. I had to learn from these people, okay? I can shoot fast, I can shoot accurate, I know I can. But I need to learn the tactics that they're incorporating so I can filter these things properly. 10 years later, I find myself still a student of understanding that when I actually show up on site and actually working on a contract, or the new guy on the group, I actually do keep my head down and my mouth shut, because I need to learn the way they do things here. I know I'm good at what I do, but just the same, I got to get on board, because kind of like the conversation we had the other day, Scott, is when you use the word tactical, you're talking about other people. You're talking about team. You're talking about people on the outside, discriminatory shoots, who you can, who you can't, things of that sort. But that's what came to mind with the conversation there.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Rick, tell us about yourself, what you do, and your competitive shooting background.
All right, hey guys, Rick Labistre. I'm in the Army National Guard. I'm 11 Bravo infantryman. Currently the sniper section leader of a light infantry battalion. Competition background actually started off in the military. I went to our state competitions. It's basically like a division level state marksmanship competition. That was my first ever formal competition, and kind of got the competition bug ever since. Been doing that for a number of years. Hit the National Guard sniper competitions, and in fact, I just got back from our state competition this year, about a week and a half ago. So I also hit as much as I can on my own time. The local USPSA competitions haven't really gotten past the local level on that, just because of it's always when I have to be at drill or I'm on duty or on orders, something's going on. It's just it seems to always work out that way, you know. But I try to hit as many competitions as I can, just because, you know, I want to try to stay sharp, push my skills, and just get tested on, you know, things that just like more than just your annual rifle qual, because, you know, I mean, we've kind of hit on that, and I mean, getting into the nuts and bolts of really testing our skills versus some admin qual, you know, out there, especially some 25-meter alt-C garbage that just, you know, it's garbage, man. We can get into that, which I'm sure we will, but yeah, so that's pretty much my background. Other than that, just standard infantryman fare, a couple deployments here and there. Pretty much been in every position in a rifle platoon, in a sniper and reconnaissance section that you can think of. So a little bit about my background there.
Roger that. Okay, cool, man. Thanks for joining us tonight. All right. All right. So let's unless Rick, you had I know you came in on the tail end of that. Anything to kind of add to those comments of what you already heard, or?
Yeah, man. You know, I like what you know, like Michael was talking about. I like to try to get guys that have never competed, especially on the military side. Is mostly the ones that I deal with. Guys that have never competed, they always think it's just like gun gaming, and they can't, in their minds, wrap their head around that there's a separation between mechanics and tactics. You know, we're not necessarily testing tactics in some of the, you know, in most of the competitions that we're doing. We're really testing individual skills, and we're pushing individual skills, and they tend to kind of confuse the two, where you're, you know, testing your individual skills, like, you know, things as simple as like presenting your pistol, picking up the sights, getting hits on target. You know, they equate that to being on the same level as tactics, which are more collective tasks, and they can't really see how it really helps them improve on an individual level, the, you know, where it will apply in the tactical world to them. And I can't emphasize enough to people that, like, you can step up your game and contribute so much more when you are the most efficient shooter that you can be, and you can free your conscious mind up to pay attention to the tactical situation and make better decisions, because you're not so focused on trying to do these you know, individual skills, perform these individual skills that you should be better at, that you should be just doing subconsciously, having a subconscious proficiency, or preferably mastery at. So I'm a big believer in that, and I think a lot of that's going to come out tonight in our discussion.
That is exactly the point right there.
Yeah, and that's a great
what you're hitting on is ego. That is the number one reason, in my opinion, that guys with a tactical background will start poo-pooing on competition, because if you've never competed before, you show up at a class, or you show up at a especially like where Mike competes, Rio Salado, we had some freaking heavy hitters. You're going to get your ass handed to you. You're just going to get whooped up on, and it is going to be really tough on your ego if you're a pipe hitter, special operations, whatever it is, and you feel real good about your skill. You're going to show up, trust me, ask me how I know, and they are going to wear you out, and you're going to be like, and whatever, the easy thing to do is go, oh, this is not tactical, and that'll get you killed, and then just run right back over to where you feel safe and comfortable and stay there. That's 100% the reason all this comes up, guaranteed.
That is number one excuse I hear.
Yep. Can I throw in the devil's advocate on that one, Ernie? This is what I've heard from people, is that, you know, you're not using cover. You're not reloading. You're dropping mags on the deck.
Now, bro.
Okay. Here, I can answer all those questions. First of all, if you can't tell the difference between a shooting match and a gunfight, then you shouldn't be carrying a gun.
Exactly.
Done. So we're out. If you know, any of you guys that have, I know there's several guys on here. When that bullet cracks by, makes that supersonic crack by your head, it's worse than any freaking buzzer that you've ever gotten in your life. So all that aside, if you can't tell the difference, you just need to be, you shouldn't be carrying a gun at all. The bottom line is, it's no different than anything else. You're using your ability to think, move, and execute at the highest possible speed and level, given the scenario that you have. So, whatever that may be. Yet, are you not using cover the way you probably would? Yeah, you probably are not. Yeah. But I guarantee you will use cover way more properly when people are shooting at you. Doesn't really need to be taught that well. You'll start sucking in.
You know what you're doing is you're establishing, you're learning your abilities under pressure. Okay, you're learning what can I actually do under just the pressure of a match. What shot can I take? And going out to Utah, there's all kinds of low percentage, no shoot, head only, 15 to 20 yard shots. You actually have to freaking aim, and you have to do it under pressure. And the downside is, if you throw a shot, you lose. If you have a no shoot, that's 25 points you're down. Okay, so it's a big deal. So there's stressors involved in that, but you have to actually learn your capabilities. You actually have an honest appreciation. When you get done with the match, you're like, everybody's badass in their freaking basement on the computer. But in real life, when you step up and freaking skin that thing, people see what you did and what you didn't do. And a lot of guys don't want to do that. They don't want to step up and have, like I said, a 13-year-old girl or a dude on oxygen come off his oxygen and wear you out because you're a super commander from the cool guy club.
Or some dude that's literally like 100 pounds overweight. Yeah. And you're like, how in the world is this guy wearing me out? He's 100 pounds overweight and he is crushing it.
I'll tell you right now, this is like when we talk about the gamer thing and the tactical side and all that. I see a lot of people in the industry that will not go out and compete. They will not. They'll teach classes, but they will not go out and shoot a match. And it's because they don't want to put their name on the line. Anybody, and I tell everybody in every class I go to, hey man, I'm here to teach a class. I'm not here to shoot against you. If you want to shoot against me, I shoot matches all the time. Let's freaking strap it on. We'll do it. We'll see what you got. But shooting in a class is not a match. That's not a match. That's a comfort level that I control, and it's not fair. If I shoot against my students and I beat them, I'm supposed to. And if I bask in it, then I'm a dick. And if I shoot against my students and they beat me, then what the hell am I doing? Why am I not practicing more? People don't want to expose themselves to the risk of embarrassment, which is what Ernie was saying. They are just as afraid. I mean, psychology has shown in a whole bunch of studies, people are just as afraid or very, very close to as afraid of embarrassment as they are physical harm. And you got to step up and do it. And people say all the time, people come up to me when I'm at Real Salado that have taken classes with me or that I know, and they're like, hey, bro, it's cool that you come out and shoot. You actually come out and compete. And anybody can compete against you. I'm like, yeah, man. I love this. I love to shoot. You get better at it. I learn more about it. I learn more about shooting every single match, and I would be depriving myself of the opportunity to learn more to help pass the knowledge on that I have. Because what? I'm afraid of getting beat. I mean, come on, man. You're not Superman. Just get out there and freaking get after it.
Yep. If I had a nickel for every time I've tried to push some of these matches out into the forest, like, hey man, we're having, the state shooting competition coming up. Come on, guys. They're paying you. They will put you on orders and pay you to go shoot. There is no downside to this. Yeah. And I hear, I don't know, man. I don't want to go out there and get booked. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to embarrass my unit. And it's always the same thing. And I'm just like, dude, it's not even about that, man. I mean, do you think anybody goes to their first match and crushes it? Do you think anybody goes out there and starts at the top? Like, come on, man. Everybody starts somewhere. Get out there and you're going to be a better shooter no matter where you place. You're going to learn something. I guarantee it.
Lots of guys out here want to get into it, right? And they're like, well, do I have this? Do I have this? Do you think I'm a good enough shooter? Yada, yada. How do you think I'll do? And I'll answer their questions and I'll go, but understand this. I don't care who you are. Your first match, you're going to get your shit pushed in.
Oh, fuck yeah.
but that's what you want. If you were the greatest thing ever in your first match, that doesn't mean you're great. That means the sport sucks.
Yeah.
And the sport doesn't suck.
Well, you showed up at a match where everybody sucked.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You're gonna go out there.
The tallest midget, man.
Yeah, you're going to go out there and some 12-year-old girl with a $5,000 open gun shooting 9 major versus your 115 9mm is going to hand you your ass. But you're going to get better. You're going to get better. So, guys, let's get back on track with some questions here, even though we're starting to answer a lot of them already. So let's go with 2 questions, right? If you had to pick one thing, whether it be the most important thing or not, what is a tactical / self-defense minded individual? What in your opinion is the biggest thing they're going to learn from competition to get them motivated to come out? On the reverse side, what is competition not going to teach them? So we're actually going to start off with Ernest.
So the first thing I'd say is that the number one thing you're going to get as a quote tactically minded shooter is learning to execute under stress. An unknown, ungiven environment, you're going to learn where you stand. Can you execute and perform under demand, under the stress of your peers watching? And that's the number one thing I'm going to say you're going to get out of that, because it's going to be stressful. And here's the thing: the higher the level of the match you go to, the more that's on the line, the more stress there's going to be. The other thing I'll say is what as far as what you're not going to get, it's not gunfighting. Regardless, you're not going to learn tactics, regardless of what, and I like IDPA, I like USPSA. IDPA is kind of like gunfighting fantasy camp, right? But it's not, right? You're not going to learn tactics from it. USPSA is as close as you can get to a pure game with a gun, right? Because tactics aren't, the only tactics are stage tactics. So what's the best way for you to shoot the stage and save time? So they're different, but both of them are valuable from learning to perform a given task under stress.
Cool. All right. Aril, thoughts?
Well, I think Ernest was spot on. Thank you.
Okay.
What you're not going to learn, you're not going to learn tactics, even if it's IDPA. And I'm not trying to bash on IDPA, but the stuff there, it's if you're a citizen and you want to learn tactics, there are plenty of guys who teach that for everyday carry people. And if you're in law enforcement in the military, obviously you're getting that kind of training. Competition's not going to give it to you. Competition will give you a sense of confidence with your gun, which, I think right now we're all primarily talking about handgun shooting, which by far is one of the hardest shooting. So if you can learn to manage your pistol, all the other guns are going to come into play as well. And I've always found it's easier to transition to a rifle or a shotgun, having a solid foundation with my skill. And the same thing, if you're in law enforcement, guys, and I stress that to all the Leo brothers out there and sisters, the competition is just going to, you carry that gun on your side every day. Having a solid base is going to mean everything to you. And are you guys able to hear me? I'm hearing some sort of static.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Jon, thoughts?
So for the tactical shooter, what they'll actually get from competing, in my opinion, is processing speed. So like I spoke about earlier, processing in a shoot house, that's all problem solving and processing, in my opinion. And a lot of people process very slowly. And that's one of those things that in competitive situations or stages, you get a lot of processing time, very little processing time, lots of processing. And then the competitive shooter, what they'll get is like an appreciation for having to complete or accomplish that task. That tactical task will give you the same appreciation to accomplishing a stage. So I think there's a somewhat of a similarity there that can actually be transferred over to the competition guys from the tactical side. Just my 2 cents.
Cool. Shannon?
I think the one thing that competitive shooting does, which is done for me and it's done for others, yourself as well, Scott, is it exposes your weaknesses, and we don't like that. We don't like that at all.
Very true.
It lets me know, what do I need to work on? Where did I trip up? Where did I screw up? Of course, it takes a little bit of time of, a little bit of observation, blameless kind of analyzation, so you can figure out what those things are. But it lets you know exactly where you stand amongst your peers in that particular discipline. And that can be pretty tough on the ego. But on the reverse side, just came to mind right now, is not too long ago, I took a 2-week basic SWAT class. And I wanted to see how the domestic world actually ran their SWAT life, I guess you'd say. I was amazed at how restricted they are and what they can and can't do, as opposed to what we did in perhaps Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, something like that. I actually, believe it or not, had a new admiration for those guys. I was like, now I see why you have to focus on A rather than B, where, frankly, it was competitive shooting that actually got me to the place I am right now. And I'm not even masterclass yet.
No, actually, Shannon, you've made masterclass like 6 or 7 times. It's just that he'll shoot a 90 and then follow it up with a 63 and then get bumped back down before the match is over.
It goes right back to the it goes right back to the point that I was making, is that you find the right course of fire, that right stage where you're having to do a lot of left hand leaning, or there's a lot of steel, or there's some long range. You're looking in the mirror, whether you like it or not. It's going to tell you right then and there, you suck at this, you might be good at that. Nobody likes looking in the mirror. I know I'm probably talking of, at a more of a philosophical approach to this kind of thing, but that is the reason why on Friday nights, guys like who are on this panel right now, we might not be at the bar. We're actually dry firing in our basement.
Absolutely.
That's the separation.
Yep. Rick, how about you, man? Any thoughts from like the long range game?
I like what Jon was saying, and I want to build on that just a little bit. He's talking about processing. We have in the military so many tasks that need to happen, not just the shooting. A lot of people tend to just focus on shooting. Okay, there's, take your general purpose forces, your line infantryman. Oh, he's a shooter. But there's a lot more tasks that need to go into that. So when you build these core skills, and you get that processor speed booming up, you're familiar with your weapon, you know what it feels like to reload on the move, you know what it feels like when your weapon runs dry, you get all these mechanics down, you get them down to a subconscious mastery that frees your mind up to focus on the tactics more. You can pay more attention to finding that piece of terrain, finding that piece of cover, making a decision whether to go left or right, whatever it is, you're freeing up mental processing power to focus on the tactics, because you've already ingrained those mechanics in you. You don't need to think about it. So
because the shooting problem is easy.
Exactly. That's the simplest part of your day, is the shooting. And for the long range, like we always say, a lot of people look at snipers and they're always like, well, you guys take these long shots, these precision shots, and and most snipers will tell you the shooting part is the easiest part. That's the part that really doesn't change. Your dope's there, gravity stays the same, the bullet basically does the same thing it does as long as you learn what it does. It's the tactics, it's the field craft that you need to focus on that really takes up most of your mental processing. So when you can do anything like competition that builds on those core skills, that ingrains them to the point where you don't even need to think about it anymore, that frees up your mind to focus on the task at hand. And so that is invaluable. You can't, you can't put, a value on that. So to me, competition is something that just helps further along your tactical game. Not necessarily in the sense that a lot of people think it does, but once you figure out exactly what you're doing and how it helps, you can't trade that value. You just can't.
You're freeing up bandwidth. You're freeing up bandwidth. Mike?
Yeah, I guess probably a little different take, a lot of the same concepts, but for the tactically minded shooter, as I see it, sports shooting obviously shows your weaknesses, shows your strengths, but more than anything, it demonstrates how difficult it is to do those tasks extremely rapidly with a level of stress put upon you. It's really important for people to understand how difficult it is when you go fast. I say in every class, speed is a magnifying glass for mistakes. Everything that you do that didn't feel quite right when you're just on the range shooting, the wheels freaking come off when you're in a match. I mean, a little bit of catching just a little bit of the feed lip of a magazine on a reload is a completely bobbled reload at speed. So you learn to recognize that when you go fast, I call it the corner theory. Anybody, you can take a corner in a minivan at 50 miles an hour and do it really badly. You can't do it at 150 miles an hour. You fly off the road. Like everything is exaggerated. So they learn that. They learn how difficult it is to do all those simple things that seem pretty easy when you go slow. Now put a little bit of stress and put a bunch of speed to it, and it's an honest appreciation of what you can and can't do. That's something that you really, I think you can only get when you go outside of your comfort zone, which is shooting someone else's course of fire against other people while other people watch. From the sports side, do they get anything tactically oriented? They get zero. There's no tactics involved in sports shooting, just straight up. There's none, because nobody's ever been shot with paper target, not once. So you can play IDPA, or you can play USPSA or 3-gun, whatever you want. There really is there are no tactics involved in that. Tactics is strategy, and tactics. I played lacrosse in college. Okay. Are the plays that we ran and the strategy we ran are tactics. It is a problem-solving evolution against a dynamic adversary. So you're really not getting you're not getting that in the USPSA, because you can do walkthroughs, and same with IDPA and any of the sports shooting stuff. You can see the stages. So you're not getting tactics. What you're getting is just true raw marksmanship at speed. And I think that in and of itself is great, and leave it there. One of the things that neither one gets in any kind of sports shooting, and it's not. I'll say the word first, and then I'll backfill it with my rant, is that you don't get any kind of, there's no mindset involved in it. And I'm not a friggin' Till Valhalla, you're a Spartan warrior friggin' guy. I think that's garbage. It is absolute ass clownery. Okay, there's nobody there when the game's on. There's nobody patting you on the back. Oh, bro, I believe in you, man. You're a Spartan with your shield or on it and all that crap. Okay, you got to come to grips with who you are. You got to say, hey, man, can I do this? Can I pull a gun out? Anyone that carries a gun with consequence has to go, can I pull a gun out, or can I shoulder a rifle and do with that rifle what it was designed to do, or do with that pistol what it was designed to do? And all the tactics in the world and all the marksmanship in the world doesn't count if you fold. You got to come to grips with who you are. And that's something that the people that I find the people that hide from competition are hiding from stress. And it's all about stress. It's management of stress. Anybody that's done stressful stuff, there's a whole concept called stress inoculation. The more you're exposed to it, the more stress it takes to get the same rise out of you. Okay? And so at the end of 2005, when I was getting ready to freaking leave Iraq, bullet would crack by, and I'd be like, damn, I just kind of wince a little bit and go, that's not that close. Like you get so accustomed to it. Well, people that were brand new in country, their first rotation, they're like flat on the ground. And it's because they haven't been exposed to it enough to manage it. It doesn't take much to reach the threshold for them to start to come unspooled. And that's back to the stress component of it. That in and of itself will help you build that mindset. Learning to function under stress is hugely important, and you don't get that on the range by yourself, and you don't get that in a place where you can't get beat and you can't get embarrassed and you can't make mistakes in front of everybody. You can't get disqualified. All of that is a huge component in you building a mindset. A mindset isn't a friggin' briefing you get. It's a way you live your life. And a lot of people don't get that, any stress in their life outside of going to a match. But that's still, that's one of the benefits of it. It's not tactics, but it's stress. And stress is going to drive your decision-making process. It's going to, your confidence in marksmanship and your ability to manage stress is what works. It's worked for everybody that I know, myself included, that's any good overseas. The ability to utilize the skills that you have under stress and keep a clear head. The ability to adapt your plan. That part of it is, it's sports shooting really forces you to do that if you want to be good at it. You gotta harness your fears. You gotta learn to work under pressure at a high rate of speed. That is helping to build that combative mindset. But it's not tactics. It's not. Yep. But it's a way to continually put yourself under a modicum of stress. Okay. So I think that's something that we don't really identify as being a benefit. We look at it just the skill side of it, or do you get tactics or don't you get tactics? Is it marksmanship or not? It's not tactics, it's marksmanship, and it's stress. And stress leads you to a point where you can manage stress better and better. You can solve problems faster and more intuitively with the same level of stress, because the same level of stress gets less and less of a response. It's like a drug. You know, the more of it you take, the more of it you need to take to get the same rise. And so the more stress that you put yourself under, the more stress it takes to get your rise. If anybody's like, I talk about skydiving. When I first went through the military free fall course, first time I exited an aircraft at 12,000 feet, all I saw was the ground and an altimeter, back and forth. That's all I saw until I reached pull altitude. That's all I saw. And it was like, okay, can I save my life yet? Not yet. Can I save my life yet? Not yet. Can I save? Okay, go save your life. That's all I saw. 8 jumps later, I was like, oh, Ernie's boots untied. Oh, look at that bird. Because my vision widened, because I've been exposed to stress enough times that it took more and more and more, and my comfort level grew. It had nothing to do. I still sucked at skydiving with only 8 in, but I wasn't afraid of it. It didn't stun me. It wasn't overwhelming to my senses. And that constant, the repetitive exposure to stress, you go to max 5 stages, 5 times a weekend, you get exposed to it, you're learning to manage that stress. And that is a huge positive benefit for anyone who's a combative shooter and anyone who's a sports shooter. And it's the same damn thing. That's something that doesn't really get identified much, but it's, to me, that is a huge benefit of that.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.
Ernest, I'm going to have you hop in because I tell the Jim Cirillo story that you tell in your opening brief about competition in your classes. Number one, can you tell the Jim Cirillo quote or story? And then number two, our conversation at the last Todd Lewis Green Memorial, where I asked you if you felt faster when you won the first production nationals. Do you remember that, what you told me about what you saw? And I think those two things are an interesting thing about Jim Cirillo, the domestic gunfighter of all time, right?
Right.
And then the second one is about what you saw when you were running and you won the first USPSA nationals.
So the two, Jim Cirillo is, like I said, probably one of the most famous law enforcement gunfighters, one of anyway. I believe 17 gunfights, killed 19 people, something like that. And he told me a story about shooting the Bianchi Cup one year, and being on the line, and walking up to the line. He said at the time people were pointing, "Oh, that's Jim Cirillo." Jim Cirillo was kind of famous at the time. I believe he was shooting for the FLETC, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center shooting team. He was a legend at that time, and he said he walks up to the line and there's Phil Hemphill on one side, and some other like legendary shooter of the time shooting the Proctor. He said the target's turned. He said I drew my revolver out, and this is his words, not mine. And he says my gun I was shaking like a dog shitting razor blades, is what he said. And I'm not even sure what that means, but sounds like it's bad. And the point is, what he said was, I never once remember my gun shaking, and all the gunfights I've been in, I never remember my gun shaking. And his point was that he was a huge advocate of competition and the stressors that it put on you and the abilities that it developed. And you just can't get around, that from that perspective. As far as what I saw at the Nationals, I think I know what you're talking about. I can remember a specific stage at the 2000 Nationals where buzzer goes off, draw the gun out, I'm shooting, and I see brass coming out of the gun. I'm seeing muzzle flash, in certain positions in the daytime, right? I'm seeing paint chips off the target, the whole 9 yards. I get done with the stage and I was like, wow, that was slow. That was horrible. And the guy, those of you who've competed before, looks at the timer and calls out the time, and I was like, what? And I crushed it, right? But it seemed slow, and I was trying to go fast, but I think it seemed slow because I saw so much. I saw everything that happened while I was shooting this, sights lifting, again, brass coming out of the gun, rolling off the top of the slide, again, paint chipping off of steel targets, holes appearing, just all kinds of information coming in. And it didn't seem overwhelming or fast at all. And I don't know if any of you guys have, experienced like that before, but again, very high stress stage for me. Wanted to shoot really well, and I was a fairly experienced competitive shooter at the time. It wasn't like, this was new to me, but I very specifically remember that stage. So yeah, it's you see more, you process more information is coming in, and I think everybody's touched on this. You have the ability to just do more, and the shooting is just an ancillary task.
I'll throw some in. I got to bounce here in a sec because I'm leaving for the Nationals in the morning. I got a daughter to bed actually. But what Ernie said, I 100%, man. The best stages, every one of the best stages I have ever shot, were like match wins at Rio against the kind of crew that's up there. There was 2 years ago when I was shooting a bunch. You can look on the USPSA things. I basically won production class like every weekend for like 2 months or something. And every one of my best stages, by far, I did exactly that. I came up, I could have scored my own targets. I knew where everything was. Like, oh, that one's going to have a D. Oh, that one's, that's 2 A's. So that's an A and a B in the head. I could score every. It felt like I was going slow. I'm like, man, I should have pushed myself harder. And they're like, dude, you beat the fastest time by 1.5 seconds, and your points are better. And it seems slow. And I think it is because your mind is working so rapidly, because you've taught your mind to work rapidly. Your body can never keep up with your mind. Your body can never move fast enough to keep up with how fast you think. And so if you just relax, if you think effectively, if I think at the same pace that my body can move, I see every single thing. If I'm thinking I'm 2 targets or 3 targets ahead of the shot I'm on, then I'm already departing that target. And so what I got from that, I sat down and really thought about it. I'm like, why do all my best stages seem like the slowest ones? And it's because I'm matching my ability to perform physically with my thought process, my ability to process the information that I see. And so I'm solving the problem as it appears to me, and then I move to the next problem. And I'm solving it properly because I'm not halfway done and my mind's already going to the next one. And that's a thing that I learned that I took with me overseas. I solve the problem that's right in front of me because that's the most important problem to solve right now. And then when that's done, I immediately transition to the next one. But I finish this one, then I go to the next one. And it's a skill that you get, and it manifests itself in what Ernie said about him at the Nationals and what I was talking about being up at Rio. The best stages you shoot will be the most effortless, and they'll seem slow. Every one of us, that didn't seem fast at all. And they're like, dude, that was burning. And it's like, that's when we talk about I know Frank talks about it, Proctor, about the processing speed. I talk about seeing, there's looking and seeing. I can look at a target, but I don't see anything. Seeing is processing what you looked at. Your ability to see is so enhanced by this that it helps everything you do. And that crossover to the tactical environment is I start to take in more of the room. Each time I look in there, each time I look at a group of people, I walk into a restaurant, and as I walk in, I see the butt of a pistol, and I go, oh, that guy's carrying an XD. It's just my mind. It doesn't get past me. Not only do I see that there's the butt of a pistol, but I'm looking close enough to tell by the checkering marks that it's an XD. So it's like that type of thing. To me, the more you're around it, the more you are learning to actually take in all that information at a high rate of speed. When you slow the pace down a little bit, it's easy not to miss anything. And it's hugely important.
Outstanding. Mike, before you take off,
Mike, I got to wave off too.
Are you guys good? Before you guys take off, you want to plug anything? Your classes, anything at all? What you guys are doing?
Yeah, I got a few classes left this year. Florida, South Carolina, one here local in Casa Grande. So check me out at langdontactical.com. Mike?
Yeah, I got I got a class in Casa Grande, a low light class coming up here in about a month. And then I've got a couple 3-letter agency classes, and that's about it. And then I got the Nationals tomorrow or next day, and then I've got Western State Single Stack. And next year is going to be a whole bunch of new stuff. A lot of simunitions integrated into the covert carry and stuff like that. And I've got guns for it. Nice. Where you can actually line the sights up and pull the trigger at somebody that's lining the sights up and pulling the trigger at you. So
nice. Outstanding. Hey guys, really, really appreciate you hopping on, guys. Seriously appreciate it.
Yeah, good meeting you guys.
Good to see you again, guys.
Take
Nice
care.
meeting you guys. Nice seeing you, and we'll chat with y'all later. Talk to you later, Mike.
All
Take
right,
care.
Ernie. See you.
Out here.
All right. Good luck, Mike.
All right, thanks, bro. Out.
So we'll wait for those guys to wave off here before we compliment them in any way. Yeah. So for the listening audience, I mean, if that's the first time you've ever come across Ernest Langdon and Mike Pannone, shame on you. You're not searching hard enough. But if there has been anyone have known that has said, the infamous "it'll get you killed in the streets," those two are living examples that those people are absolutely, unequivocally wrong and incorrect, right? Between those two, I don't think there's anything out there that hasn't been done, so anyway, I don't want to shine those guys too much. All right, guys, let's bring up something else. Somebody in the chat, in the podcast, or in the on the YouTube chat brought up training scars. Okay. And one of the things, and I'm not mocking the dude that put it up there, it's actually a legitimate question. You don't know what you don't know, right? So, for example, unload and show clear is a training scar. Why or why not? Jon Dufrense, you start off, buddy.
So I say nay. Partly because if you think about it, I had to unload my rifle prior to getting on a helicopter. I had to unload, not show clear to anybody, but I had to unload my rifle before getting on a bird because dudes would shoot the bottom of the bird sometimes, and that's not good. I mean, you think about it.
The bird or below the bird, that's no good.
Well, you think about, as long as it wasn't up, but at the same time, you think about the whole process of that, and you're like, okay, obviously we have to unload before we get on the bird because of stupidity that has happened before, and you think about the stress that you just went through. Hopefully it wasn't too bad, but some people stop thinking, and once again it comes back to that processing, kind of not processing things, and they pull a trigger. But you think about this, I piss people off all the time at competition because I'll go ahead and I'll unload, show clear, but then I get one really good dry practice shot and I take my sweet time with it. And
Good.
Exactly. So why do I do that? Because I get some extra training while you guys are waiting to take the stage over. It's
a free rep. It's a free rep.
Exactly. This is my time. So I'm going to take my time and I'm going to use it wisely. And guess what? I didn't just create a training scar. I just got another rep in training.
Yep.
Hey, bro, there's guys out there, Dave Wampler, that take like 2 minutes on the make ready portion of it. I got no problem. Right, Shannon? Love this. Oh, I love Dave to death, dude. He is
we love the guy. Yeah.
Ark hasn't told you guys about my my little dance that I do when I draw my gun. So.
Oh, is it a tribute to Jobu? Is it a tribute to Jobu?
Range stuff, John. Don't be sharing. That's the second time tonight.
Dude, you know what? I'm okay. I'm okay with the extra sight picture. Even I kind of draw the line on the search and assess at a USPSA match.
Yeah.
That's a whole different question or section of shenanigans that needs to be kind of brought up later.
I had one guy do
now we're getting into range theatrics.
Dude, he did that thing, and he even do it right. He did the full on. God bless Chris Costa, but he did the whole fucking neck break thing. I'm like, bro, what are you looking for? I'm right here. Unload, show clear now. You know what I mean? So anyway,
well, that's the problem. They're not looking for anything.
Exactly. All right, what do you think about it, buddy? Training scars.
Well, I think that both Mike, and I don't know, I think Mike might still be on, or his connection's still on. I see his picture there, but I think they both talked about this. It was the same thing about the different skill sets of taking cover or not using cover, or dropping mags. You're gonna know when you're in a real gunfight or a real fight, or when you're competing, and there's a definable difference. I think, again, it's another excuse for people to not come out and compete because they're worried about some idealized version of something that never happens. I I've been competing for years, and I can't recall any time where I've been on a range situation where I did something that I do in competition and it just happened. Like, oh my God, I just did that. I don't know. You guys, has that ever happened to you that you've like done something like, oh, I can't believe I did that?
Yeah, like
No,
show
not at
up
all.
to a tactically minded class and unload and show clear after every repetition. No, that doesn't happen. I will say this though. For example, like after and this is not a humble brag, so don't take it that way. After I won the fast coin at Ernest class last year, the last thing I want. Thank you. The last thing I want. Yeah, exactly.
It's hard.
It is. Hey, you want to piss off the internet? Do it with a rolling special. Anyway.
Challenge accepted.
Exactly. The last thing I wanted to do was drill my concealed carry appendix draw. It was like the last thing I wanted to do, and I just got heavily into dry firing for my competition rig. And then you know what? When I went back to my appendix draw, was it slower than it was before? Yes, it was. And then I drilled it for a little bit, and everything was good. Now I have a fast for enough appendix draw, and my competition draw is up there too, right? Is there going to be it's just like any other thing you are constantly focusing on practicing on. The answer is you need to practice both. If something becomes a training scar, it's because you're not training hard enough. Rick, what are your thoughts, buddy?
I think the training scars come from a lack of understanding of the why behind why we do certain things. Guys get into their heads that it needs to be done in step A, B, and C, and that's all I understand. Nobody's come to explain why. Knowing the status of your weapon is never a bad thing. I don't understand how unloading and showing clear and understanding the process between, hey, we're making this range clear because we're going to go pace up targets, da-da-da-da. So to apply that into a tactical environment, knowing the status of your weapon at all times, what's the problem here? Training scars that I have seen have actually come far more from the tactical side of things than the competition.
Sure.
So I'll give an example. For example, the Army, very, very common with short-range marksmanship drill with what commonly called ready-up drills. They have a full-size E-type target, maybe 25 meters away, probably much closer, and we're just drilling guys on a line. Ready, up, bang, bang. They drop their weapon down to the low ready, come back up, get a sight picture, bang, bang, put two in the target. It's very common to see that going on, very mindless, not a whole lot of explaining why we're doing this kind of drill. It's kind of like, hey, you're doing that, and it's going to teach you how to be ultra gunfighter, ultimate badass. Great. And then we transition to an actual dynamic environment where these guys are like entering, clearing a room, and every time they make a movement, they turn left, come up, get a sight picture, drop it down low ready, come up, sight picture. This muzzle is just going up and down and up and down and up and down. I'm like, dude, are you doing curls with your rifle? Or like, why are we picking up a sight picture that's different every time? Well, that's just how we always did that. That's how we did it in our ready up drills. Unless there is a friendly in front of that muzzle, that the gun goes up, that gun stays up. You know what I mean? Like, think about the time that it takes for you to bring that muzzle back up if we're in like a close quarters environment to engage a target where you could have already had that sight picture, that red dot, whatever sight you're using on that target, and engage. Flip that safety off, put two in his ass, and do work. Or failure drill, keep engaging. But whatever it is, you don't want to take that muzzle down. And these are the training scars a lot more than I'm seeing, at least on the military side of the house, the Army. Maybe other branches do their thing. I don't know. I can't speak to that from experience, but a lot more of the training scars come from what I see as a lack of explanation as to why we're doing things. Not necessarily what to do, but why. When people understand more of the why, I think those training scars really start to go away, and they go like, okay, cool. Here's an administrative task that I'm showing for safety purposes. I'm not training myself to perform this administrative task in a gunfight. I'm just doing this so we're safe on the range. No big deal. But if we don't understand why, then that kind of all goes to shit, and people just jumble and throw it in there with, oh, this is training. It's not, you know. That's just how I feel about it.
Shannon, what's up, buddy? What do you think? Training scars, man.
Training scars. Training scars come from exactly what he just said. The instructor that's actually there cannot explain why. They are actually probably, in my experience, 9 times out of 10, they are a derivative of where they came from, wherever their foundation of base was. And what they brought with them was a POI from where they started. Oh, and that's fantastic. That's great. Everybody needs that kind of foundation. But there was no cultivation. They did not expand. They did not keep going. They did not move forward. They didn't push the limits. And training is not training unless the wheels are pushed off. If you're getting it right all the time, you're wrong. And nobody wants to venture into that uncharted territory. That's a scary place. It really is. Because that exposes instructors, that exposes curriculum, that exposes shooters. And it can be tough. Kind of like what I mentioned before, looking in the mirror and trying to realize what you're good at and what you're not good at can actually be a cold, dark place sometimes. But that's the only place you're actually going to get better. I mean, the question still remains, if you're getting better at something, how do you know?
Right.
How do you know you're getting better at something? How do you know?
Some kind of metric.
Yeah.
Exactly. A metric. And that will trump a training scar all day long. Speaking of training scars, I have one. I've always had one. And I don't know why. And I actually realized it, funny enough, tonight. I throw in a reload when I don't need one. And
you do that a lot, bro. You do that a lot. And you know why you do that a lot?
What do you mean? You on a stage you're doing that, or just?
And it's not part of my stage plan at all.
It's when you. Is it when you're moving away?
It is exactly when I'm moving away.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, quite frankly, along the lines of Jon, a tactical mindset. I'm getting ready to engage another part of my battle space. I want to be prepared when I get there. So what do? I top off.
Yeah, that's interesting. You do that.
I do it all the time. I don't know where it comes from.
Yeah, I always thought because you're very good at reloads, and after you get done hitting all those Charlies and Deltas, you want to do something you're good at.
Wow.
Ooh, rough.
Sorry, bro. So Shannon's my main practice partner. If I don't throw that shit out there, the next one's going to be all crazy.
But it's true. And now to go back to what the other fellow was saying, is it really a training scar to top off right before I start moving from one position to another? I don't know. My environment's going to have to dictate some of those things for me, indeed. But I'll tell you this, I don't like it.
You got to go back to production minor, man.
So you brought up a good point just with that last statement there, Scott. So is everybody shooting production?
No.
Really?
We can actually go now. Jon, I know you're busy.
I am. I'm on a budget, definitely.
So I shoot carry optics.
Okay, but no one's shooting open.
Nobody's shooting open.
Yeah, that's my point. Is that for the most part, I'm trying to think of tactical guys. I guess Shannon Smith would be someone who's shooting open, who's a tactical guy. But most guys that I know are shooting.
Ron Francisco.
Yep. Ron.
Yep. So yeah,
but most are shooting production or carry optics or something along the line of off-the-shelf type guns with some modifications.
Yeah, no, that's true. So Brian Giovannini, he's a GM in limited and production. He's FBI. He does it. Who else? Who else is a duty guy that shoots USPSA that we know? That's
Christopher Ambrose.
Chris Ambrose, and Brian Manges. Chris is knocking on Master, who never practices except for his job. Brian is also Border Patrol. He's been a GM, I want to say, since 2004.
And I wonder why shoot open, because it it really doesn't have a direct line to what we do in our everyday lives with that type of gun.
I have a theory on that. And it's funny that you bring up Chris Ambrose, because he and I were talking about if you could afford it, if money was not an option, 9 Major was falling from the sky and Atlas was just throwing you an open gun, right? It would be actually easier to learn the game in open because you don't need to worry about reloads, and you go and the dot doesn't move for the most part, right? And all you have to do is worry about stage planning, right? Instead of stage planning with a reload here, here, and here. So if money wasn't an issue, open would be a great place to start to learn how to stage plan, and then you could go down. I will tell you myself, the greatest day on the face of the earth is when Carry Optics went to 140 millimeter mags, and I had to stop planning everything based on reloads. My God. Anyway, so
10 rounds a pop. 10 rounds, baby.
But don't you think though that production and Carry Optics, for the most part, besides that, it helps your skill sets, and that's because one of the things that I got, when we talk about blowback from different tactical-minded people, law officers. Was, competitions, you're just shooting around those race guns. That's not like a real gun. Well, you can shoot a stock pistol in any of these games, and you can still be competitive if you're good enough. But you can shoot your duty weapon. And USPSA and IDPA both allow law enforcement officers to show up with their duty rigs on and compete.
Sure, absolutely.
Or if you're like me and doing military competitions, it's restricted to rack grade, beat up M4s and M9s, and hey, but everybody's got the same handicap, so that's also kind of the fun part.
Nope, I absolutely agree. The thing that I love, the method I love is, well, you guys shoot those powder puff load. I'm like, listen, Mr. Winchester White Box, have you ever put that thing through a chrono? Because I'm sure sometimes you're going to get up to 1050. Sometimes you're going to get down to 725 too with that inconsistent load. So you just need to go ahead and relax, buddy. Go ahead and relax.
Hey, the Winchester White Box was available at Walmart the day of the match, man.
hey, you do what you got to do.
They're done that.
Yeah. You do what you got to do, man. There's still guys out there that shoot Tula. God bless them, man. So that's my thing. Like, I don't care what division you start in. Like right now, Shannon, you've been shooting limited forever and a day. You're gonna actually switch from your 35 over to a 2011, right?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because I have found a limitation there. It's taken me a while to actually realize that too. Is that I have more of an appreciation for the finesse of a superior made gun. Although I'm a Glock guy. I've always been a Glock guy. It's all I've ever used. I've actually used it in a combative encounter more than once. I've got total complete faith in it. But to race with it, to just strictly compete and race with it, I am pushing the limits of my ability to drive that gear, and I am running into road stop after road stop after road stop. The last competition that you and I actually shot together, I come in third, I come in second, I come in first. Then all of a sudden I come in 91st and 28th. Why? Because I'm pushing past the gear just a little bit. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean that I had a little too much Jameson and a Dremel the night before. It just means I'm trying to find that little thing that I can actually maximize on that gear. And I've lost confidence, maybe just a little bit. But it doesn't mean that I can't do it. I do think that guys like your Savagnis and your Vogels and that sort of thing, I do think that they are phenoms. I do put them up here, I guess you would say. But at the same time, it doesn't matter what weapon you put in their hands. They can drive it very good and very well and compete well and actually win. But what's what I'm doing? I'm looking for the transition. I'm looking for the change, because at my age and where I am in this stage of life, I hate change. I can't stand it. I want to be able to take any gun that I have and actually be able to run it at maximum effect. But then I started realizing I need to change. I need to see things differently. I need to perhaps even experiment a little bit. And it comes from changing my thinking, which of course is the hardest part for any of us, isn't it? And I did not want to think that way. I wanted to kind of be an underdog. I want to beat those guys with the 2011s. With a Glock. And I kind of had to put that aside. I had to put a little bit of ego away, frankly. and
Yeah.
see that
Well, I
what's
will
happening out
say-
there is this. Go ahead.
Shannon is going to be when you make the transition to a 2011, because you tinker so much with your 35, he's going to be the only guy who's like, man, this 2011 runs like a rape date because my Glock 35 sucked. But that's because you mess with it so much. You know what I mean? So, all right, so let's flip this a little bit. One of the things that I want to prepare those people that, again, that are tactical, self-defense minded, who want to get into gaming, is the world of competition. And there are 90% of it's awesome, but just like anything else, right? There's 10% that confuses people, right? So, Art, the first time I actually, I didn't even know you were LE, to be honest, until you mentioned, I think, on one of your YouTube videos. I was like, oh, that's cool. Shannon, we have friends that are on both sides of the fence, guys that once they're done with the match, they box up their gun and they don't think about it until they go dry fire. And what do you mean carry a gun? What?
Yeah.
That type of guy. So what do we need to prepare people for the competition? So actually, let me rephrase that. What drives you crazy about purely competitive shooters that have absolutely no interest in carrying a gun, and how they relate to people who are self-defense tactically minded? Hopefully that question makes sense.
I'll tell you, when they call them Timmies.
Okay. Some of them deserve it, though. Some of them
deserve it. Some guys are out there, and we all know them.
Yeah.
I'm wearing nods to the next tournament, dude.
But I just like, we don't like being called gamers. I mean, people don't like to be called Timmies just because they want to carry their gun off duty. They believe in self-defense and protecting and Second Amendment. And, we're all in this. I'll tell you, and not just because I'm a SIG fanboy, but when that whole thing went down with the SIG and the drop testing and the negative 30-degree angle and all this other nonsense, when that all went down and people went so hard and so fast against SIG, it was disappointing, because I think we're one community. I don't care what brand of coffee you like to drink or what type of gun you like to shoot or what competition you like to shoot, IDPA, USPSA, it doesn't matter. We're all people who enjoy firearms. We want to be responsible gun owners, and there's a whole subset of people out there who hate that and who want to take it away from us. So I think we don't need to be pouncing on someone who thinks differently than we do in terms of, yes, they want to carry a gun off duty. It shouldn't be a bad thing. It should be a good thing. We should support it.
Yeah. Okay. Agreed. John?
So I actually come in contact with that a lot, and it's because a lot of the times I shoot competitively with my carry gun, and that's because
Did you shot appendix when you first started?
Yeah,
I think you did.
Wow,
I shot appendix all the time. So
cool.
I got a lot of shit for it because they thought I'd shoot my dick or something like that, and I'm like, why does that matter? It's not your dick, it's my dick. So, but most of all, it was just the fact that I was using a carry gun to compete forced a lot of people to go, oh, he's just blah blah, and then they see me compete, and then they're like, oh shit, okay, he's a little quick on his feet, but how are his hits? And then they see my hits, and then they start to change their mind. Now, the fact that at the safe table, I'd go ahead and I'd have to pack up my gun in my bag, walk, 200 meters to my car or whatever, and then load it in my car. And you see them looking at me a little funny, and it was very baffling to them. And one of the things I like to tell everybody is that it's like in high school. You know how there's all those cliques?
Mm-hmm.
There's two different types of cliques in the shooting world like that. There's the tactical dudes and the competitive dudes, but then there's like this wizardry of unicorns that are out there that like to take them both and blend them up into one
Yep.
And I think I like to be a unicorn because it's a lot of fun. It's
You look like a unicorn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to
Thank
fart some
you.
rainbows. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's the
Damn it.
name of this
That's a
modcast.
meme
I got
waiting to happen right
Yeah.
there.
We're a unicorn.
Becoming the unicorn. And personally, like that's really what it is just try to have fun. I mean, I understand that they the dudes that want to compete and do that solely and pack up their gun and not think about it until dry practice. I get it. They're like golfers. That's how I see it. Where they're the golf guy. They don't go home and golf too. They don't carry a golf club on them. They just go to the driving range or an 18-hole range. They shoot their game and they go home with their golf clubs. I see it the same way. But if that golfer was to, discredit another one just because he likes to sit in his backyard and chip a few balls, what the fuck's wrong with that? Like, the dude likes to practice.
Yeah.
So
No, I
the
get you.
same-
I'll give you a great story on that, John. So I was at a match. It was actually in Fredericksburg, right? And it was a hoser stage. It was like you had 5 targets. It was 2, 4, 6, 8, right? And I go through and I shoot the gun that I carry. It's a Glock 34 and with the striker control device on the back. Okay. And the guy goes, get through it. And he goes, unload and show clear. I'm like, okay. I'm like, is everything all right? He's like, yeah, dude, your back plate is like about to fall off, man. I was waiting for your gun to explode. I'm like, oh no, dude, that's a gadget because this is the gun that I carry and, kind of changes it from a striker to like almost like a hammer. So, I don't shoot my dick off or something like that, right? It's like, you compete with the gun you carry? I go, yes. Why in the fuck would you do that? And I go, for the same reason you have a gold limb cap. I want to. And he just, he just looked at me and went, okay, buddy, you're good to go. But
some people forget that it's you're supposed to also have fun. It technically is a game, so have fun when you do it. People get a little too crazy about it. It's like, dude, just let me have fucking fun. I'm at a game. I'm gonna have fun with it. So
I'm gonna eat the meat and I'm gonna spit out the bones. That's what I'm gonna do.
There it is. Shannon, what have you seen out here, dude? Because I mean, we live in a very interesting area. We are in Metro DC, right? You've got, I mean, every single agency and branch of the military is out here. Certain areas have a very high, worth level. So you have everything. There is just as many $6,000 open guns as a match as a production, as production guns are out here. What are you seeing out there? Funny stories about non-tactical gamer guys.
Well, it's actually the tactical guys. It's actually just the opposite. It's the tactical guys that are actually involved in competing, trying to figure out who works for who, and they try to do it by the boots you're wearing.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. It's truly funny. But they're so convinced that if you're shooting well, oh, he's definitely HRT. He's MSD. And I'm like, no, I have been mistaken for fifth group. I've been mistaken for SFOD. I have been mistaken for all this stuff just because of what I'm wearing that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it happens a lot. It's like, no, actually, I'm none of that stuff. And then they, of course, give you that funny look. But one thing that is that I actually do find quite encouraging is the last match that we had at Shadowhawk. The area director was there, and he actually took it upon himself, Kevin McPhee, to take the Shadowhawk people that were there, that were just straight line tactical only, and head up their particular group, And so we're on that squad, and of course I had to be the guinea pig that he had to actually, okay, this is how we this is how we that. I was like, I know what's going to happen here. They're going to be a little bit slower. They're going to probably miss a few things. I was actually pleasantly surprised. Their accuracy was off the charts. No one missed a reload. I was like, holy cow, the tactical crowd's actually catching up with us. What do we do?
Which agency was that? Well, what agency were they from?
They were a mix. We had Marine Force Recon that were actually there. And then we had one retired Army, and then we had one active actually as well. I think it was 18 series.
I got to tell you, the agency I'm most impressed with, man, is I don't think I've met a shitty shooter from Border Patrol. Seriously.
WarTac is like scary how well they
Border
shoot.
Patrol's good. Air Marshals are very good.
Yeah, Air Marshals are very good as well. Speaking of Air Marshals, do you guys know Brett Davenport?
Yes.
He is going to unseat Tim Herron as the nicest guy in shooting sports.
It's the truth.
Yeah, because Tim's been getting fired up about like Area 3 and stuff like that, so he's losing ground to Brett. Brett is the nicest guy. And at Shadowhawk, Shannon the other day, which is right behind Peacemaker, and I guess they were having some rifle class over there, and they were seeing all the USPSA guy, and they were grumbling. And then Brett just walks by. He goes, "What a bunch of tactards." Right? I'm like, dude, you're a U.S. Marshal, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. Anyway, all right, guys. Well, we've been on for a couple of hours here. We should probably wrap things up. What I absolutely want you to do is a couple things. A, give me any thoughts that we didn't cover today that has been burning, a hole in your conscience that you just want to get out there. Doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it, somewhat is germane to the topic, number one. Number two, please, please, please plug your stuff, okay? You guys all got invited out here because you're awesome people with a great message, and more people need to know about your stuff. So I'm just going to go left to right from my screen. Arik, you want to start off, sir?
Sure. Well, it's kind of related to this, for the people who have the hardest time trying to get into competition or poo-pooing it, saying, it's a bunch of gamer crap, whatever. Just come out and do it. Even if, say, you're a tactical guy, or even some, like John came out, he shot appendix. If you're an everyday carry dude and you carry appendix, then come out, shoot appendix. There's a division for you. If you're in law enforcement, like I said before, both gamer sports will allow you to show up in your duty gear, and you can shoot it with your vest. And even if you don't, this is how I started. I didn't go there to compete. I just went there to practice with my gun. Guess what? I hated being at the bottom of the listings, and I learned what I needed to do to get better. And then I, moved up to the top. And so it makes you more confident. It makes you a better shooter. So just come out there and do it, and then make that decision. If you're making a decision that it's going to cause all these bad habits and it's going to create training scars and it's going to teach you bad habits, well, just come out and do it, and then make that opinion. Because if otherwise, then you're just, blowing hot air. As far as, plug-in stuff, obviously my website is Firearms Nation, and there's also a YouTube channel. Everything ends up at the website. So if you're lazy, you don't want to go to other places, go there. But if you're a Facebook guy, go to Firearms Nation. If you're on YouTube, hit Firearms Nation on YouTube. I do a lot of videos on gear reviews, but also tips and tricks on becoming a better shooter. You can also follow my journey becoming a better shooter. And then finally, also I want to promote the podcast, the Firearms Nation podcast. And, there I talk to all sorts of people who are in the Firearms Nation, from tactical guys to competitive guys, to journalists, other bloggers, other radio guys. So it's all positive stuff, all trying to give value to everybody. Because the biggest thing for me, the biggest change in my life is when I got involved with firearms, and I'm very passionate about it. And I believe it's important, and it's a great country that we live in, and it's one of our rights. So we got to keep it together, and that's why I created Firearms Nation. And thank you, Scott, for inviting me today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Really enjoyed your work. One of the other things I want to throw out there.
Wait, I'm sorry, Scott. I forgot one thing. The Shooter Summit. I forgot about the Shooter Summit.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to say. Yes, it's still up there. It's still available. It's not free right now, but it will be. The new one will be free. So the Shooter Summit, I brought together 23 of the top firearms instructors. This past year in 2016, we talked about the same topics. I wanted to get everyone's opinions on it, and it came down to a lot about will competition get you killed. So a lot of good information there. This next one, it's going to be a little bit more specific. It's going to be different, but it's going to be bigger. So watch out for that in December. But thanks for reminding me,
all
Scott.
right.
How much was the first shooter symposium? How much is it now?
So to get the all access pass, I think
Yeah.
it's $24.95. So $25.
Yeah, guys, that will be the best $25 you have ever spent as far as getting the widest spectrum of shooting. You know, I say firearms industry, but it's really the shooting industry because we're doers, not collectors, right?
Right, absolutely.
And it isn't a whole bunch of guys just hugging and saying the same things, kind of like we're doing right now. But you know, there's Pannone, Lamb, Ernest Langdon, Jeff Gonzalez, who has actually said some things contrary to what a lot of other people said about certain things, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? Ben Steger was on there. It was awesome. Steve Anderson,
Yeah.
guys, yeah. You need to subscribe to Arik's podcast and his YouTube channel, Firearms Nation.
Please do. Please support me.
Yeah, and it is, you will learn a lot.
The interviews with Benny Cooley and Manny Bragg are worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Benny Cooley, I can't say enough about him. I was so lucky. I brought him down here to Homestead this past year, and wow, I've taken a lot of classes from a lot of different instructors, both competition and tactical. And again, he's one of these guys that crosses both sides of the house, and it was such an amazing class. If you ever have a chance to train with this guy, please do. He is a treasure in the firearms world.
It was so funny. The way that I actually came across him is I was in Slimania working with some people doing some stuff, and some guys that were working out of Mosul came over Christmas night to hang out. And I was, you know, somebody gives me a nudge in our little makeshift bar and says, "Hey, you know who those guys are?" I'm like, "No, I actually don't know who those guys are." And so I'm sitting there talking with this guy that's, you know, 6'1", squinty eyes, blonde hair, long beard. And I was like, "Well, I heard you guys on, you know, like a tier 1 level and that sort of thing." I was like, "And have you trained with Benny Cooley?" And this guy named Kyle Lamb just looks at me and he says, "How do you know Benny Cooley?" And I'm just like, here he's like this M4 god, but he's a lot like John. He's a unicorn. You can't find him. And but I was just like, "How do I get in touch with him?" So he literally just grabs a piece of paper and writes down Benny's telephone number. It was the first time I ever hosted a class, hosted a person, but people traveled all over the nation to train with Benny Cooley. And I have to admit, I mean, I have been in combat. I have close and at far away. I've had to pull people out of cars. I've had to this, I've had to that. I thought I knew stuff. I thought that I was that next level, the other side, whatever it may happen to be. By the 10th shot of training, I was just staring at like, "Oh my God, what is this? I don't understand it." I felt like a newbie again, but it was impressive. It was just unbelievable. The man is so ahead of his time. And I say the same thing about Manny Bragg as well. The way that Manny can actually interpret things and actually deliver that information to you is, you can grow exponentially training with these guys, period, hands down.
Yeah, and that's the switch I think competition teaches you how to do. Where most people shy away from what they're not good at, we can't do that because it'll come up. Right. And I actually go like, these days I'm like, "Oh my God, I suck at that. That's awesome. I get to train something and not be bored now." You know? So anyway, so Shannon, you started talking. What are you doing, man, other than like teaching people how to shoot other people in the face? And
so what, you know, after about, 10, 11, 12 years of contracting, I realized that I like training because that's how I got into the industry. I didn't have that foundation, you know what I mean? So I had to expand my way of training. And so now I'm teaching for State Department with Foreign Affairs Counter Threat. And I enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun. But because of other shifts and changes in life and that sort of thing, I am relegated to actually only teaching privately now. And I've got probably about 8 or 9 students that I teach privately now. various walks of life and that sort of thing. But I enjoy it on that personal level. I didn't think that I would. There were the times where I had 18 people in a class, but I never could find that connection that I wanted to find with a student when I was doing things like that. There's a great, amateur level and novice and actually introductory courses, of course. But when I actually see that look on their face, or we're actually charting and graphing the progress through a 1 hour or 2 hour private or something like that, just the look on their face, it gives me a personal reward when they actually accomplish what we were going for,
Yeah. Yep. I will tell you that Shannon, these days you're my main training partner, right? And,
we have been, indeed.
Yeah. And anybody who wants to go out with train with Shannon, he has the most lovely ability to tell you you're a fucking football bat and makes you want to get better at whatever that is in which the shit has entered the show. So awesome, man.
Thank you.
Rick, what's going on, buddy? What are you doing these days?
Well, for plugs, being in the military, being in the Army side, and especially in Army National Guard, which I'm in, I like to try to get the word out that there are a lot more competitions within the military than people realize. I'm in the California Army National Guard. Our state competition happens every year, and just trying to get the word out to people, like, man, give it a shot. Like all the things we've been talking about. Set your pride aside. You're going to walk away from it a better shooter. You're going to improve. No matter if you come in dead ass last, it doesn't matter. You're going to walk away a better shooter. I have never convinced anybody to go to one of those that walked away saying that it was a waste of time. This is garbage. I've always said, man, how can we do it again next year? How can we incorporate that into our training? Man, I want to do some more of this. I'm sick of being the guy that's out in the desert shooting a broken TV. That shit sucks. And, there's no training value into that. Like, I walk away feeling like I turned a bunch of ammo into noise and my pocket slider. And that's the only thing that happened. So when they get a taste of that, they just want to go further. And that's what we want for the force. It's just send these shooters out there. It's like, hey man, this is something that I learned. Take it back to your units, show your guys, elevate that unit's, training, incorporate this into your training plan, whatever it is that you can do to make things better. We want a better shooting force. We want mastery. We want guys that their weapons are an extension of their body. And we're killing dudes more efficiently and better, and we're winning the fight. And so I would say to anybody that's out there in the force, seek out those competitions. They're out there. In fact, next month, Fort Bragg, they're having the Force marksmanship competition. I know I couldn't make it this year, but there are those out there. There's always all Army. You don't need to be an ultimate top badass shooter to go to these competitions. Just go find them out. If you're in the National Guard of whatever state you're in, try to find your state marksmanship coordinator. Just about every state has a state level competition, which is like a division level competition. You can earn your EIC points, which if you don't know what those are, check it out. It's a really cool program. Just find out what kind of competitions there are going on. If your chain of command's not doing it for you, ask around. Find out, because there are some great opportunities out there to compete and get paid if you're in the Guard. Like, hey, they'll put you on orders. You will get paid to go shoot these competitions. It's a blast. Like, what more could you ask for than to get paid to go shoot somebody else's ammo, have a good time? There's like zero downside to this. Just put away your pride for a second and go out there and learn something. And if you can just get past that, find out where it is. There's always stuff going on. Just be proactive about it if nobody's putting these opportunities in front of you. And I guarantee you will not regret it. I've never met anybody that regretted participating in any of these competitions. They've always to a man said, hey, I just want to do it.
Profound statement. That is a profound statement. I have never seen that happen. And anyone that has actually shot a competition with me or Scott or just buddied up and came out, they're addicted the moment they get there.
Exactly. And sometimes I gotta apologize to people. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, man, but your pockets are about to get lighter now.
Yeah. Exactly.
I just gave you your first hit of crack, and now you're addicted.
Yeah.
And so,
Now I know you're super busy and everything like that, but In USPSA, you said you're like B class or so. You're getting there, right?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm probably.
I know you don't
I
check
probably
a lot.
average out to like a B.
I will tell you though, you are a grandmaster in baby making, though, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I can't miss.
What?
I'm A zone every single time.
Yeah, he
That's what
he
I'm
had a
for.
baby a couple months ago, man. He's
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I got five.
Yeah,
five. So
they
I'm
just bam, bam, alpha, 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 alpha. They just keep on.
Yeah.
Mama
I'm
didn't
sorry.
raise no quitter.
Exactly.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
Bam, pregnant.
Bad joke. Sorry.
No,
Anyway.
it's all good, man.
John, what's going on, man? What are you doing? You're studying. You're teaching.
Yes. So right now I'm a full-time student, so I'm taking 12 credit hours.
Cool.
I also teach most weekends, I think. Like this past weekend, it kind of got messed up. I only had 5 students, and it was kind of nice having a small class for once. Instead of having like 15 to 16 people or something, I get a nice little small class, and kind of like what Shannon was saying with his privates, where he gets to be kind of one-on-one with these people, and you get to know them better. You get to like focus in on what is needed, and not just like curriculum that you've created prior. And I really liked it, and I think the students really liked having a small class too. But one more thing I wanted to say about like bridging the gap between the two types of shooters and becoming more of a unicorn would be to look at the parameters, right? So the parameters of competition, the parameters of a tactical shooter, you get these, there's set parameters by somebody else, either way, right? So they're either by the stage or by your adversary. So in reality, we're all, once again, we're just shooting. It's like we're all in the same box again. So this whole divide crap isn't really annoying. But so you can reach me in various ways. Sage Dynamics website, which is sagedynamics.org. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook. I'm more heavily on Instagram. I put up a lot of fun pictures and put up videos every once in a while, trying to help people get better. Let's see. That's pretty much it. I mean, you can always text me, message me. I'm pretty active on social media since I'm a student and I sit in front of a computer and on a desk most of the time. So I have my phone next to me.
That was a good closing point that you actually made there, John. It's something that Scott and I were actually talking about last weekend, which is we always think that we're competing against other shooters, when actually, no, we're competing against the stage.
Correct.
Let's give attribute. Who actually said that?
Might have been me.
It was you, but somebody stole it. Who stole that from you?
I probably stole it from Bragg or Vogel or someone. I can't recall.
But that thing, dude, when you said that the other day, I was like, oh.
Well, I mean, in combat's a competition. It really sucks to be second.
Yeah, it really sucks to be second.
I mean,
it really sucks, man. It really sucks.
You don't want to be that guy. There's no silver medal.
Exactly. So I'll just finish it up. I want to pay a couple of bills for primary and secondary. So guys, I think we have going on something like 357 individual groups. I'm joking. It's something like 20 or something like that. One of which is primary and secondary firearm competitions, which the main thing is to getting the tactical or self-defense minded individual into the shooting sports to learn, improve, and become better. Like I always say, I compete to get better with my gun. I don't practice with my gun to get better at competition. That's me. If people just want to go out and compete, go compete. If you don't want to carry a gun, that's your stuff too, but I don't understand it, but it is what it is. Check out some of the sponsors out there that we have. We got them on the forums and things of that nature. Big Tex Outdoors, Wilson Combat, AT Armor, and a myriad of other people that I am forgetting about, but they all are here to support us, pay for the bandwidth, and yada yada, bring these great people to give you guys information. As far as myself, I run Enthusiast Sites Modern Samurai Project. I am getting to be the red dot guy. I just made master in carry optics, yada yada. Had a lot of successful classes for that. It's focusing on fundamentals and performance with the red dot. No tactics. Some may sneak in here and there, especially when I have people like Jose Gordon AIing for me and things of that nature. But next class is at the end of October. I think there might be 1 or 2 spots left, but I am getting hosted. Just go to Modern Samurai Project / Shopify. Just Google it. I'm getting hosted in Florida, Arizona, Texas, Illinois, yada, yada, yada. Hopefully in the next year or so, I'll be out to visit John and doing a class down there.
Yep.
Arik, would love to have you there. I don't think you're a red dot guy at all, are you?
Listen,
Yeah.
my department is going to be putting their feet in with the red dot sights on pistols. And once they do that and I can be a part of it, I will make that switch. I like having that same skill set going back and forth. But if they have the red dots, then I will definitely join the bandwagon and get in carry optics. Because I've, people like Max Michel and Steve Anderson and some of these other guys that are open shooters have all said unanimously, even Rob Latham, that they've become better iron sight shooters by shooting the red dot.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's true.
Absolutely. So now we have even more of a reason for John to host me, and then Arik, obviously, brother. Just when we have it, just show up, man. Just
Absolutely.
I've got a few guns with dots. You're good.
Yeah. Exactly. So doing that, super humbled by the reception that the class has taken and things of that nature. So that's what's going on with me. I just want to, again, thank you guys, the panel. Thanks to Ernest and Mike who had to jump off. Good luck to Mike out there at Iron Sight Nationals. And that's pretty much it, guys. Again, primary and secondary .com, PNS all over Facebook. And check us out, guys. And let's all just get better. All right, be good.